G'day everyone, welcome to today's episode of Free Kick, the AFLW Fantasy podcast, and welcome to the beginning of the Clubs in Days series. I will be your host today, Liam, and today I'm joined by Will. Will, how are you going?
I'm very well, thank you.
That is perfect to hear. Now, I know you're excited for what we've got coming in this series, but what we really need to do is, what can listeners expect from us at this point in the preseason? What is Clubs in Days going to look like?
Pretty much, we're going to go through every club. We're going to tell you what happened to them last year, what we expect of them next year, and more importantly, who to pick, or who we think you should pick, rather, in their fantasy teams.
Well,
but we also...
Yes, you're leaving out the key bit here, which is...
But we also, and I have some very, very special news here, is we've got so many interviews to share with you to give you the inside word from the clubs.
Because I don't know if everyone else, for those new listeners, you're in for a treat. But last year, some of the players that we got from those interviews were not only themselves great fantasy players, but their suggestions, just primo stuff. Top line, incredible. Couldn't have asked for anything better. And in fact, in a media landscape like the AFLW, it was as good as you're ever going to get straight from the horse's mouth. So,
absolute gold.
We are extremely excited for what we're going to be able to bring to you this season. And it starts off pretty small. We've got a pretty low-level team, pretty low-level name for the interview. I'm sure you've read by this point the title of today's episode, but we're talking about Adelaide, and we've got Erin Hatchard, which is outrageous.
We start pretty high up there. I think it's hard to find many more big guns of the fantasy game. She's right up there.
She is on the podium.
We were... If you've been following us on social media, Mel was absolutely gobsmacked that we actually got to do this interview.
Oh, I think everyone was. Like, we were not expecting this at all when we started, and so we're, like, blown away by the fact that we managed to get to do this. But before we get to that interview, because we'll throw it in there in the middle of today's episode, Will, can you give us a quick rundown of what the Crows were like last year and what's the roster looking like coming out of the off-season?
Absolutely. So Adelaide, as always, very strong team again in Season 7, finishing with an 8-2 record in the home and away season. Didn't quite make it to the grand final this season after winning the Season 6 premiership, losing in a prelim final. But they're still likely to be a very, very strong side once again heading into Season 8. The team is one of the most settled in the competition. However, there was one incredibly major out, which was leading goal kicker Ash Saint, or Ash Woodland, to those who didn't know she had changed her name thanks to her marriage. Congratulations, Ash. So that is a big void because once again, after losing Erin Phillips to Port Adelaide, they have once again lost their leading goal kicker. So that's the second time in 3 seasons. So there's a big gap up forward for someone to kick some goals, and we'll talk a bit later about who we think that will be. In terms of major ins, the two main ones will be Jess Allen joining her sister back at the Crows, likely to play in the ruck, and also Sarah Goodwin coming back over from Port Adelaide to possibly fill in a spot in that defence.
She was a pretty high draft pick, wasn't she?
Absolutely.
In that bumper expansion draft, because she was at Port Adelaide at like pick 7, I think.
Pick 7, I believe, yeah, and highly touted. So very much a chance to slot into an already strong backline and make an instant impact.
Yeah, very, very interesting options there. Well, look, before we jump into our 5 most relevant fantasy players, I'm going to have to throw to Will and Mel having a chat and a sit down with Erin Hatchard.
How's it going, everyone? I'm Mel, and you're listening to Free Kick. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest. We have 3-time premiership player from the Crows, Erin Hatchard. Erin, how's it going?
Yeah, it's going really well, thank you, and thanks for having me on today.
Of course, absolutely. Our pleasure. I guess so to start off with, off-season, we've seen on Instagram that something pretty exciting happened. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, so was lucky enough to go on a trip to the US and then got married in Vegas to my beautiful wife, Georgie. So was definitely the best holiday I've been on, and to surprise everyone with getting married and then came back to Adelaide and had a massive party when we got back. So definitely, yeah, one of the best moments in my life.
Oh, that's such a nice way to do it.
And you and Georgie are actually one of my favorite social media couples because you do very publicly meme each other, which is quite enjoyable. Could you give us a bit of insight into that?
Yeah, I love to give her the lips filter. So there's actually a lot of people who just call her Lips now because they just know her by Lips. So a lot of people don't actually know her name. They're like, oh my God, it's Lips Girl. So I've just gone along with it. I absolutely love it. And I think it's hilarious. I'm not sure she thinks that it's as hilarious as I do, but yeah, I get her as much as I can with that.
Oh, so good. So I guess talking about like your AFLW career and history to date, you're obviously a very, very talented AFLW player. You've started off really strong when you received a Rising Star nomination in 2018. You've backed that up with 4 All-Australian places. I wonder, going into season 8, so your 8th season now, what are you working on for yourself, for your development? Like, what's there still to do?
Yeah, it's crazy thinking back that it's been this such a long journey, and to now be in my 8th preseason, I actually can't believe it. And there's definitely still a lot for me to work on. There's lots of different skills that I want to tweak on, and I've definitely worked on my fitness over the last 4 years. So that's something I don't need to focus as much on now, and it's more just working on some different crafts. So I want to be able to play different positions. So definitely working on some forward craft heading into this season. So hopefully can kick a few snags this year.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that because something we were quite interested by was that you were playing a bit across half forward last season. Is that something that you're looking to continue, or is it more just kicking goals from the midfield?
For sure, I'd love to be up forward a bit, especially when losing Ash Woodland to Port. So we've got a bit of a hole in our forward line at the moment. So hopefully they let me have a bit of time up there and can clunk a few marks. So there are some young girls coming through who are making a good mark in that forward role. So yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how it kind of pans out this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned that you've lost Ash Woodland now, Ash Saint to Port Adelaide. You've also lost, obviously, Erin Phillips the season before that. The Crows have been one of the best defensive teams across the whole of the competition, but you've lost basically your 2 greatest goal scorers. Has there been much talk into who's going to fill those big holes in the forward line? Is it you yourself?
Oh, look, if you could ask the coach if it's all right if I go in there a bit more, I'd love that. But no, there are some young girls coming through. Someone who's worked really hard this off-season who I'm really excited to see is actually Caitlin Gould. So she can grab marks, but one thing is she's very good in the ruck. So I guess it would just be finding the balance on who will fill that role in the forward line. But we do have quite a few people who are training really hard this pre-season to be able to fill those roles. So we definitely have the talent there. It's just finding what works best.
Yeah, nice. So as you mentioned, it's your 8th preseason. I guess 2022 was a kind of a high and low year, or high and still high, but not quite as high. Very high and moderately high. Wow. So I guess like starting off the year with the first season, smashing it, and then not quite making it to premiers in season 7. How did that feel, kind of having those 2 back-to-back seasons in 1 year?
Honestly, it was one of the hardest things, not only physically but mentally. I think, especially season 6, coming off with the grand final win, it was awesome. And then we were pretty tired, to be honest, heading into that next season. And it was really, tough to kind of, there was so much unknown of what was going on, and to jump into that next season, I don't think we had enough time to really prepare to the standard we could have, and we kind of just had a lot of small wins where we're just grinding through the end. So we still had a great year, but we had a lot of learnings out of that. So Melbourne and Brisbane definitely deserve to be in that grand final season 7. They performed all year. So I think, coming off season 7 and having this long break, we're really keen to crack into this next season.
Yeah, nice. So you mentioned that there were a few kind of learnings coming out of season 7. Are there any that you can share with us that you're taking into season 8, and like how is that informing, I guess, week 3 of pre-season training and stuff?
Yeah, so something we definitely we learned from coming off season 7 is we've got to train the way we want to play. I think not having as much break in that off season and coming in, we probably took the foot off the pedal a little bit. So we've really crashed in hard into pre-season. Our bodies are already sore. So yeah, I think that's one of the biggest learnings, and to just really just be in the moment as a team and be grateful of where we are. I think, the more care and connection we have as a team, the better we're going to perform on the field. So just being in the moment, having fun, training hard, and yeah, just rolling into that next season.
Yeah, and you said it really well there, because you said you took the foot off the gas a bit, but you still managed to go quite far into the pointy end of the finals. You didn't take out the flag in season 7, but you've been the most successful club in the history of the AFLW, 3 premierships. As a group, how tough has that been to maintain those high standards? And do you have to keep working on it, or is it something that comes quite naturally amongst the leaders? Can you give us a bit of insight into that?
Yeah, I think from that first season, we built a really strong culture. Having Erin and Chelsea lead us from the start, they really brought our group together and had those high standards. So that's really carried on through into this season as well. And there's having a lot of success, it makes you want more. It makes you want to keep winning. So having those losses, I think they hurt more, because you know what that winning feeling feels like. And not only do you want to keep getting those wins, but you want those younger girls who haven't experienced it to be able to feel that too. So I think that's what really drives, the girls who have been in all 3 or in 2 or in 1, is they want those other girls who are now joining our team to be able to feel that as well. So that's really what drives us. And yeah, just keeping that the group standards and culture nice and strong, because that's really what will help build us into success.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I was having a look at clubs with the most inaugural players still kind of playing, and Adelaide is number 1 with 6. So you mentioned like Erin before, who's obviously moved on, but still having such a strong cohort of players that have been playing together the whole time. How do you think that's impacting your ability to kind of just like know what the team's doing, but also like your training of the younger people?
Yeah, having a core group of girls still there really helps. You kind of know how everything works, and you've got more players to then help those other girls who are then coming into our program. So yeah, it's really exciting that we have that many girls who have stuck around. It just shows that we do have a good culture where we are, and we are a very strong club. So yeah, it's a credit to the club that they've really looked after us, and they've taken it seriously from the start. And it just shows with the girls who have stuck around, and there are young girls who want to be part of what we have. So yeah, we just want to keep building on that, and yeah, helping these young players coming through, because they're going to be the future of the Crows. So it's really exciting seeing all the talent coming through now. It's actually kind of scary.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And you mentioned the young talent. You've now no longer got a monopoly on South Australian talent with Port Adelaide coming across, and they've also stolen a few of your star players. Has there been some genuine heat in that Port Adelaide rivalry, or do you still sort of see them as your little cousins, so you don't really care too much about?
There was definitely heat in that first showdown. That was one of the funnest games I've ever played, and I think it's always just going to be rivalry against your 2 state teams. When they first came in, you knew a few players were going to probably shuffle over there, and the best young talent were going to go straight into Port. So to be able to get out there and play against another South Australian team is just amazing, because there are so many talented SA girls who don't get the opportunity in their state because there was only limited spots with us at the Crows, so they'd have to go into state. So it's amazing that there's now 2 teams for the South Australian talent to potentially go into.
Yeah, and you did win that showdown quite convincingly. Did you manage to get a few words into some of your old teammates?
I didn't. I tend to keep my mouth shut a bit. It gets me into a bit of trouble. So I think a few of the other girls might have had a little dig.
Is there anyone that is particularly lippy at the old teammates?
I reckon the Ange Foley has a bit to say now. It's good fun. Love a bit of banter. So, when you're out in the field, they're your enemies, but once the game's done, they're good mates. So, it's all good fun and all good banter.
Yeah, very nice. The final question we like to wrap up all of our interviews with is who from your team is there to watch? Like, who's going to be the big breakout in the coming season? And I know you mentioned Gold before. Is she the one to watch, or is there someone else we should be keeping an eye out on for a big season 8?
Caitlin Gould would be my pick for the one to watch. She has just had an amazing off-season. She's come into pre-season really strong. So, definitely watch out for Caitlin Gould. And someone else who I'm really impressed with is Abby Ballard. She's come out firing. So those two will be the ones to watch for our team this season.
Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate taking the time. You're a very big name, so Will and I were feeling a little bit nervous in the lead up to this. But it's been amazing. Thank you so much.
No, and thanks so much for having me on.
No worries. Thank you so much.
Well, that was absolutely fascinating. And for those of you who are questioning, Liam, Will, Mel was in the interview. Where is she now? Mel is not going to be on a number of these Clubs in Days episodes because she has had the temerity, the outright gall to go on an African safari and be out of phone contact for an extended period of time, which just shows a lack of commitment to the pre-season of a sport that she does not play, which I think is just ridiculous. I don't know about you, Will.
Well, to be fair, she has actually been doing a fair bit of admin from Tanzania, which is pretty good on her. But yes,
it's seriously impressive. I don't want anyone to go around dobbing and saying, "Well, what are you guys doing?" This show would not happen. A lot of these interviews would not even get close to happening if it wasn't for Mel's work. So that's just a heads up. And now we can go straight into most fantasy relevant players for the Crows. Will, I have a feeling I know who's number one's going to be, and you're going to have to really sell me on her. Who have you got number one?
You know what? Because you're going to have to sell it, I'm actually going to start at number 2. Good start. We're starting not at the start. I'm starting at number 2 because number 2 is in fact Anne Hatchard, who we just heard from. And the reason I'm bringing up Anne Hatchard at number 2 is very strong fantasy player, as we know. Great average of 98 last year, which was ironically actually a down season compared to her season 6. The thing that has us both interested and concerned is the talk of a potential more forward-related role. So that's the something that does bring me a little bit of concern. That may have been a reason for that bit of a dip, but we know she can rack up the ball. What do you reckon, Liam?
I'm just burnt. I really thought she was going to launch again last season, and that was off the back of the idea of, she still managed 103 in a season where she was clearly injured in season 6, and then comes out, looks great for the first few rounds of the year. I got a little bit big in my boots, particularly with Jono, because we had spent the entire preseason prior arguing who we should pick out of Monty and not Monty, sorry, Marinhoff and Hatchard. And
Monty.
I've got you'll figure out why I've got Monty on the brain ladder. And then she just really didn't serve it up, and the thing that really killed me was her marks were down. She wasn't covering as much territory, and this talk of a forward role, I don't know about you, I'm sure in a world where Adelaide's looking to kick more goals, they're going to try a whole bunch of options. That's super concerning.
Yeah,
forwards just not reliable scorers.
Yeah, for me, given we've talked a bit about her marking prowess, it makes sense to me why they would want her up there as a marking target. It just means there's less of the ball, even in a team as strong as Adelaide. I think the only way it could possibly be good is if she somehow manages to be a forward in the game. If that does eventuate, you've probably got a player who, even if her average is down at 90 to 80, she's still probably the clear number one forward. That's probably the only saving grace that there could be.
Look, I would be very surprised if a player who averaged 84% CBAs can get forward status. Like,
completely agree. Unless they manage to become really up to date and bring in dual positions
DPPs
mid-season, DPPs
in week 5.
in week 5. If they can pull out a DPP in week 5 and she gets forward status, fantastic. Till then, it's going to be a tough sell. I reckon it's a tough sell.
Okay, I'm going to advocate against myself here. Maybe right now in the preseason, Adelaide is like, we've lost our 2 best forwards, Ash Woodland Saint, and we've also lost the season prior, she who shall not be named at Port Adelaide. Are they not then thinking we've just got we've got to throw a bunch of different options here and find out what forward configuration works? Anne Hatchard can play as a forward. She is kind of like Jazz Garner, and then they work so well ahead of the ball to be able to take those marks and really just drop off at a contest so that they're there to take marks inside the forward kind of 30 metres. Right now, that probably looks like a great option, but I'm sure that when it comes to some of that stoppage work, she is going to be as dominant as we have seen her before. I just don't know how you could pick it, even if she says that she really wants to do it.
Yeah. It's also the defensive running. The defensive running for me is the thing that you'd miss if she's up forward, because her ability to cover the ground is her greatest strength. And if she's basically just sitting on a half-forward flank, you're wasting such a powerful runner.
I would be very concerned about they've got Ebony Marinoff and she's the leading everything getter in the AFLW history, but that was almost a perfect segue. Really well.
Almost a perfect segue, because I had one other point. I had one other point about Anne Hatchard, which is keep an eye out for if that forward wall does eventuate, could be a change up in the middle of the season, which makes her a bargain pick.
Yes. Or she's going to be really cheap as a forward in season 9 when I believe she will go back to where she looks best. I could be completely wrong. I'm happy to own up to that later, but it just seems like a midfielder to me.
So congratulations everyone. That is Will's first watch and wait for our club series.
I should start a counter at this point.
See, I wasn't going to do it, but you sort of led me into it by saying the next season. So, I'm actually going to chalk that one down to Liam. Thank you, Liam. But we're going to move back to number 1, Ebony Marinoff. Ebony Marinoff averaged 112 last year, fantastic average. Only player that came close to the great Kiara Bowers in terms of her scoring ability. To me, she's one of those players that if you don't pick Bowers, if you don't pick Marinoff, you're almost missing out on a player guaranteed that's going to score well over 100. I guess my main take on it is you're going to have to go bold if you're not picking either of them. And Marinoff, to me, is a set and forget type player. What do you reckon, Liam?
I still believe that she will be in the top 2 mids, but do not think of this as me saying that you have to get her, because she finished the season like a house on fire after round 5 onwards. But her final season was down. She had her final 3 scores at 93 or below and finished the season in the finals with 78 and 76.
And that was exactly what I was going to bring up. 2 70s to finish the year was just the one thing that had me a little bit worried. But, I mean, we were worried about Kiara Bowers coming into last season, and we saw what she did last year. So I think Marinoff is a safe pick. I don't think it's a necessary pick. But if you pick Marinoff, you're probably going to be pretty happy with 100-plus average. I would
be pretty confident in picking Noffy if Anne Hatchard is a forward.
Yeah,
because I think that's the upside to make it a worthwhile pick. Because we do have to remember every time we have these conversations, in our top 5 most relevant players, there is not going to be a lot of basement price players.
Exactly.
We're not going to have draft picks to choose from.
A lot of these players are probably, even like Marinoff, an average of 112 means she's probably going to lose your money, even if she starts the year with an average of 100. And that's something you're just going to have to cop.
Yeah. And that kind of burnt me specifically with Turbo last year. I didn't jump back on at the right time when Kiara Bowles finally started to be value again. And if you don't consider that kind of around round 4, round 5, that's when if you don't have them, or if you do have them, you just know that there are going to be more people that get them around then because they'll be cheaper, because the way the pricing mechanic works, that's when all of the rookie price players who are playing go up. Now, I would argue that drop is going to be less big. God damn it! I'm doing a day of work and my vocabulary goes out the window.
It's going to be less bigger.
Yeah, they're going to be slightly smallerest, because there's fewer players who are going to be basement price coming from the expansion clubs. There will still be some, but no draft and fewer expansion players. And most of the expansion teams actually had everyone play last year because they just churned through their roster. So, few things to consider there. I can't fault you for Noffy. It hurts to have to look at both of them because, there was just that round where she just went, yeah, no, I'm just going to ruin your experience of the game because you're going to trade out players you like, and then I'm going to go 148.
And that's the thing. That sort of ceiling just means that even if it's not, a guarantee, it's worth considering regardless. So that's why she's the clear number one to me at the Crows.
And if she can add a couple of extra marks in the midfield or steal some of Anne's 5.5 tackles a game, her ceiling is enormous. It's ridiculous.
5.5 tackles for someone who already averages something like 8 tackles a game.
9 tackles a game. Something stupid. Yeah, I'll just pinch a little bit of that tackle market share. That'll be really supplementing a low score. Right, so we've gone through the top 2. I don't think anyone who played last year was going to be surprised that they were sitting up there. Now, Will, who have you got 3? And I say who have you got? I see who you've got, and I'm fascinated because this is someone that I championed last year.
It is someone you championed last year. I've ignored an obvious one who I'll talk about at number 4 and gone for Danielle Ponter at number 3. And Danielle Ponter is a player that we know is insanely talented and at some stage is going to absolutely explode. And as you said, Liam, you're advocating for it last year. Didn't quite happen, but there was some good signs there because she scored 79 against North. And
she scored 74 against Geelong.
Exactly. So there's some good scores against tough to score against defences there. And basically the important thing here is if she can improve her consistency, she averaged 51 last year, which as a forward is still pretty good. If she can push that average into the 60s, there's value there. And given she's only 22, we still haven't seen her peak. And the reason just quickly, Liam, the reason I've put her at number 3 is because this year, and this is something we're going to talk about so much, is you're going to be searching for those value players that can just rise that average up about 10 points, 15 points, and hopefully get a bit of, surprise value out of a player. And to me, Ponter's one of those players.
Love it. This is like listening to the Adelaide episode we did last year. Because I actually think there's only going to be one player difference in the players that we talked about, because Ponter was my pick. The thing that frightened me is actually looking back, doing our research for this, and me thinking, Ponter, loved it. I had her in a draft league that we were doing. Then I had a look at the correlation between her CBAs and her scoring, and they were inverse. She couldn't get around the ball. In that game against, in her highest scoring games where she had basically 75s, 0% CBAs, 0% CBAs in the games around them. 13, 13, 23, 21, 28, 7. All of these different little smatterings. It's almost like you take away something from her game when you put her in the midfield, which is, I don't understand. Yeah. And all of my fantasy learnings, both M and F, suggest that is wrong somehow, but it's just something to watch out for.
And I think the thing about it is, the reason I'm hopeful that works in our favour this season is because they need a spearhead. They need someone up forward to kick the goals that Ash Saint and Erin Phillips aren't bringing, especially Ash Saint, who's a leading goal kicker herself. And Ponter is such a natural replacement as a mercurial, super talented forward up there. So if she can take some of those goals, I think that 60 average is something that she can definitely hit.
Yeah, I would want to see, though, an increase in her possessions. That's what I really didn't expect last year. Because I remember we had this chat this time last year, and I was like, I think Danielle Ponta will take the role of Erin Phillips and kick the goals. And in fairness, that wasn't wrong. She still kicked 11 goals last year. She looked really good across her 10 games. The thing that I did see was fewer possessions, a possession fewer a game, slightly fewer tackles.
Yeah.
Meters gained were up because I think that she was spending more time a little bit higher up the ground, but she wasn't using that for possessions. I think there is an absurd amount of talent there. It will always be someone to watch. It might be that we see one game or two games and go, oh yeah, bang, that she is better now. Like we've seen the improvement, but that is fraught with risk. It's concerning.
It's a super risky pick. And like as you were saying, like some of her best games are games where she's had 15 disposals plus. So she's had her highest ever score was an 89, 20 touches. A game like that, super. But then, similar to what we said with Marinoff, you look at her final series last year, 8, 4, 6 disposals, 39, 12, 23.
Yeah, that's not good.
And that's where you go, do you take the risk?
I don't think I could take the risk week one.
Yeah. I agree.
If there was like a 3-game preseason, which it will never happen because of the length of the season as it is, but if you could get that, I might.
So
be confident enough and comfortable enough to take her, but oh boy. No.
So what you're saying, Liam, is that we need to
watch. No. I can talk about waiting or deciding not to take someone, but I don't need to say watch and wait every single episode or every single player. That's a given. We're in the preseason.
Well, a player that we definitely don't need to watch and wait. Number 4.
Wrong. We do need to watch and wait because the role's going to change. But yes, go on.
A player that I was very happy to have correctly picked last year was Chelsea Randall. So the inspirational skipper turned back the clocks last season in season 7, averaged 84. Fantastic. Ended up being almost a must-have pick at the early stage of the season. 6 of her 8 games were over 80 points. Now, there's 2 caveats here, and one of them that's what Liam said, which is she has the ability to play anywhere on the park, which is good and bad because it means that she can pretty much score anywhere on the park, but it also means that she might not, because if she needs to do a lockdown role, which has happened in the past, then her scoring tanks. The second caveat to that, which is similar, is it's going to be super interesting to see where she's listed, because she played a lot across half forward and a lot through the midfield. Yeah. And if she's listed in the midfield, you've all of a sudden just got a player who's back in the pack. If she's listed as a forward, then she might actually be really good value. She might be fantastic. F1. So that's the biggest problem with Chelsea Randall is where is she going to be listed? Hopefully we'll know that soon enough. But for now, while we don't have those listings, it's going to be an interesting one because an 84 averaging forward or defender is super, super great. But yeah, it's really dependent on where she plays and where she's listed, I think, with Chelsea Randall.
Yeah, and I would hazard a guess that it would be a midfielder because as much as she did play a couple of games in the forward or spend some time in the forward line, it was a little bit Hatchard-esque in that it was kind of breaking from a CBA. I would love if it was a forward because it really would give you a potential F1, obviously with some risk. And again, Adelaide, like I was frustrated sometimes watching Chelsea Randall. Like she had that 37 playing against Collingwood where she was a tagger for the entire game.
Yeah, strange change for a player of her ability. But
the Swiss Army knife can stab other people and it can also stab you. And then she comes out 89, 107, 93 and 103 and I was in pain.
That's
I was in serious pain. I had bloody Island and Gilroy, who, by the way, good pick at the time. I called it early and said she'll be a midfielder. I rate it. Another one where Liam, on the back of very little, made a call. I just picked the wrong one, and that pissed me off.
You should have listened to me, Liam. I sold you Chelsea Randall. But I think you're right. I think you're right because realistically, playing forward, back, midfield, average out to midfield. So
Yeah, and it was it was also the fact she started at CBAs.
yeah.
But I would say this is another one. It's not a watch and wait for the preseason. It's more like you will watch throughout the year that changing role, and that creates value. If it's 3 games in the midfield followed by 3 games as a key defender, price will tank. She will be cheap, and we know that that's a 100-point ceiling. Like I would say that Adelaide, of all teams, not having put much thought into this, has the most players with 100-plus point ceilings.
Yeah.
Maybe Fremantle with Gabby O'Sullivan healthy, but even then, I don't think she's got that same level.
Yeah, and I think the other thing about Chelsea Randall is 84 is a big average to maintain. So you're probably going to see a bit of a price drop, and that's something we've talked about previously, which is that a lot of these top line players are probably going to see early drops. If that happens, you probably might have a great pick, especially if she's listed as the forward or defender.
Yeah,
if she's playing in the midfield and she's averaging 84, you're already paying a fair bit. You can probably get better players at cheaper prices, I think, especially given there are a few interesting injured players coming back.
Yeah, and I'm fully on board with watching this one through the year. I have a feeling there will be at least one round during the season where she will be the most traded in premium player.
Yep,
I have
completely agree.
No doubts about that whatsoever. Just don't know when it'll be.
Yep, for sure. So,
moving on.
Number 5, and this is usually going to be...
This is player number 5.
This is usually going to be reserved for our bit more specky picks, I think, because you know most of the fantasy relevant players. You played last year, a lot of you, and the players...
Hang on. If you did play last year...
That was what I was about to say. For those players...
Those 4 were very highly owned.
Yep.
And Danielle Ponta was one that we liked and is a little bit speculative.
Yep. And for those who haven't played previously, a lot of these names will probably already be fairly familiar to you, hopefully. But the next player that I'm going to list is a player who has come over to Adelaide from the Giants, Jess Allen. Come back to play with her sister. Going to be fairly cheap. Hasn't played since 2021 due to work commitments with the Army. So we have a potentially cheap priced ruck here. There's going to be quite a few cheap priced rucks that we're going to talk about throughout this series. The reason I do bring up Jess Allen is she has played senior football, averaged 55 in 2020 for GWS, and we think there's going to be a bit of ruck time available at the Crows because our inside word from Anne Hatchard was that Caitlin Gould is probably going to be playing as a key forward. So she's going to be mostly contesting with Montana McKinnon for that ruck role. So she could be a cheap value pick early on.
Yeah, I'm going to be very interested to see what that looks like because Montana McKinnon is actually the player that I would say is more likely to start there.
Yeah, I agree.
She has played full games in the ruck, but the converse to that is she was not always in the side. She did get dropped, and I couldn't understand it, and I don't know for what reason it is, but she was not an every week player for that team. But when she did play, we saw a ceiling.
Yeah, scored all right.
We know that she's got a ceiling in the 70s. Like, for Jess Allen at least, if she's playing week 1, I still think there are teams with fewer ruck options that may be better value. I'm looking at GWS specifically.
Absolutely. And I think that this one for me is an interesting pick, and we'll talk a little bit about this throughout the series as well, is as a potential pick mid-season. A definite downgrade option if Montana McKinnon starts the year, maybe for whatever reason, could get injured, could lose some form. Jess Allen comes in as a bottom price player, you've got an easy downgrade.
Yeah. And I think we can see at the very least now with AFLW rucks, a score in somewhere in the 40s is about what you can expect for like a pretty middling average ruck.
And that's why it interests me, because she averaged around that 45, 50, I think I said 55 before, I think that might be a bit high, but she averaged, around that average ruck mark. Hasn't played for a while, might drop, might go higher, who knows?
Yeah, she'll be basement priced because she's not played since season 5, and in that season, across 4 games, she averaged 32. So that basically means that it's basement price. You basically got a rookie here who, if they play 40, 45, 50 areas, I think that's a reasonable option.
Yep.
I also wouldn't discount, though, Montana McKinnon, because we have seen that she has a ceiling.
Yeah, it's all going to come down to Montana McKinnon's price, I think.
Because I think she's only going to be priced at like 50 points, which is not that expensive. Now, I have some, I think there are some interesting rucks last year. I'm not going to get sucked into just one mid-priced ruck. I'm looking at you, Celine Moody. I think that there are a number of... Yeah, I know. It hurts. It hurts so bad.
Yeah.
We won't think too much our rucks from last year. That was not also a highlight of my season.
We're going to leave that one all the way to the end of the Bulldogs episode because we can talk about our failings in that one there. But for now, Adelaide's rucks, going to be an interesting setup.
Yeah, Montana McKinnon, just watch out. Good points per minute as well, at above 1 point per minute. So just a watch. Keep that one in your little black book when you're creating your team. All right, so we've gone through your 5, Will, and now we come to... We're going to do this at the end of every one.
We have here the Liam special.
Yes, because Will is the only one up to now who has the Will special, which is quite often a player who scored well 4 seasons ago and only Will can remember.
Chelsea Randall. Thank you very much.
Yes, okay. Chelsea Randall is a good example. I'm going to talk about Elise O'Day or Jess Delpos. Then maybe
they didn't work out quite as well.
No, they were not it. But
we're in Adelaide, so I can claim that one.
Yes. So at the end of every one of these top 5s, the other host is going to give their most speculative pick or their most interesting pick of the players that are left. My one here is Sarah Goodwin. She is going to be basement priced, and she got picked at pick 7, and there is 2 spots free inside that best 21 for Adelaide. And even beyond that, I would say that we had, I can't remember her name at this point, but there was like a rookie who played across the back end of the season in that Adelaide backline. And they were also flicking someone like Maddie Newman around back there and at half forward throughout the year as well.
Yeah, you're thinking of Keely Custerman.
Keely Custerman, that's the one.
Who I brought in and scored, I think, 4 points or something like that. She scored 10 points and then got dropped. So I didn't earn any money from that one. But she was also a high draft pick, which was why I picked her. So keep an eye on Keely Custerman.
But I would just say that it's not necessarily something that I guarantee that she's going to get picked. I believe that as time of recording, she's in our predicted best 21. But it's not a guarantee. But she is someone that came in particularly highly rated as a junior at Port Adelaide, and for whatever reason, Abby Ballard was the play.
Yeah, I think for me, she also offers a bit of a point of difference because my understanding of Sarah Goodwin is she's a key defender. Is that correct?
She is a mid to taller defender. Yeah.
So they've got some tall defenders back there. Both Sarah Allen and Zoe Prowse can play pretty tall.
No, definitely a medium defender. I had it in my head as it was a 170 player. It's in the 160s.
So basically, you're looking at someone similar to a Chelsea Biddle, who plays a bit taller than her size. I think there is a spot for her in that back line. It'll be interesting to see how that makeup goes, though, because she came into the Port Adelaide team with pretty big raps on her out of the AFLW. So she's clearly a very talented player. So if she can break into that Adelaide lineup, I think there's a good one there.
Yeah, I think the big thing that I remember reading, and I'm kind of going back to this stuff now because she dipped completely from view through season 7, was she was a super high meters gained player in the AFLW, which is usually a good sign as a defender that you are that attacking, more high-scoring defender. Now, obviously, that's going to be more difficult in one of the most talented sides in the comp, but one to put in your black book for rookies when we are going to struggle otherwise. And she will be basement priced because if I remember,
she'll about
like
30
games.
Played 5 games and scored 27, 238, to 33 and 31. So,
basically going to be priced at the same she would come in last year.
Yeah, could be a bit of a Brenna Tarrant from last year where you start with her, make a little bit of money, move her on.
Yep. It will be in amongst a smattering of defender options. So one to right away there, name just to not forget about when it comes to making your side.
Very good.
All right. Well, that's it for the Adelaide episode. Please do go and check out our Best 21s. It'll be out on Instagram and on Twitter. And also make sure you're following us both there. We put out a bunch of content there as well. Some of it's different on each platform. And also be sure to check in basically from now on, because we're going to be releasing all of these Clubs in Days episodes for all the teams in the AFLW up to the preseason. So get excited. We're going to be releasing a bunch of content. It's getting to the pointy end of the fantasy creation season, and we're super excited. Now, I know at this point a lot of people have probably heard this before, but where can people find you on the socials?
You can find me at WillH_VI on Instagram and Twitter.
And I'm hoping that you'll be more on Twitter at this point in the year.
Yes, I am too. I've been mostly on the Instagrams for those who follow me. But yes, Twitter's going to be a bit more of a focus now that we're getting back into the season.
Well, just because you've bought a house does not mean you need to call it Instagrams like a boomer.
Well...
Apologies. That's pure envy on my part. That is pure envy. For anyone here, you can find me on Twitter at Liam AFLW Fantasy, and you can find the podcast at FreeKickWPod at both Twitter and Instagram. Everybody enjoy, and you'll hear from us very soon with the Brisbane Lions. See ya.
See you, everyone, and look out for those best 22s on the socials.